All right, and welcome to the webinar. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today in Tough Conversations Don't Get Easier, but You Can Get Better. So we will be talking today about clarity, confidence, and giving you the courage to turn tough conversations into constructive dialogue. So let's begin our journey here. So who's this guy? Well, I will be your host. I'm Joel Silverstone. I'm the Senior Professional Skills Facilitator, trainer, and coach here at the Great Canadian Training Company and CompuEase. As you can see here, I was once a professional actor. Maybe you remember me from my 6.5-minute claim to fame in 1995 on the X-Files. And then after that, I started teaching acting and saw that lots of business people were coming to my classes. They wanted to work on their presence. They wanted to work on the ability to listen, to have an impact with others and be able to interact and work on their intentions. And now let's go fast forward. It's been 20 years. I've been working as a facilitator, trainer, and a coach. And I help Fortune 500 companies and leaders and their teams and entrepreneurs around the world be more intentional, impactful with their communication skills in business. And one more thing about me, as please do join us for the Great Canadian Leadership Podcast, which I host, where we speak with leaders and experts on communication skills, what makes them a great communicator, where did they fail, where did they adapt, how did they inspire? And we always have 3 great takeaways. So what brought you here today was about communication skills and the soft skills, and do encourage you to check out the podcast. If you have any questions, again, we've got Melanie, our producer, here to help you with any technical difficulties. And let's begin our journey here about tough conversations don't get easier, but you can get better. Here's the outline for what we're going to do today. What is the formula within a tough conversation? What makes it? We're going to look at our 4 steps to having those better conversations, which we call M.O.R.E. I mentioned before I have a background in acting. We will be talking about some Hollywood tips. So this will be fun. And also we'll learn about how to be more present in these difficult moments and emotional intelligence strategies. Because let's face it, this is what's going on. Our emotions are happening in these moments. These are not conversations we enjoy having. We will, at the end of this webinar, have a 4-step process. We will have some clarity, some confidence on how to deal with that. And we're going to do a little bit of practice today as well, so we could really get an understanding, because you can have theory, but unless you're putting it into practice, it's only theory. And then, like I said, at the end, some confidence and clarity towards these difficult conversations. So right off the bat, if you can go into the chat, please, and let's type in A, B, C, or D. So here is the question. When you think of a tough conversation, how do you feel? A, B, C, or D? So A, sweat is coming out of every pore. B, I'm talking to a brick wall. C, I try. The key word is I try to breathe. Or D, other. So let's see what we got. Oh, yes, this is so good. So Janice, yeah, absolutely. That is definitely, I can feel like I'm talking to a brick wall. We've got all the above. Renee, oh, absolutely. A, sweat is coming out of every pore. I can agree with that. Lorraine, I try. The key word is I try to breathe. Absolutely. We got a few others here. So what are those others? Yes, it's the feeling of you want to just run, run and hide at that moment. I can definitely relate to that. I think we all can, because our emotions are getting in the way. Speaking of emotions, here is the formula for a tough conversation. These are the 3 things that make up a tough conversation. So we got our emotions, different opinions, win or lose. Let's start with the emotions, number 1, because let's face it, when you're in that difficult conversation, as you just said, Renee, you said also about running away. Well, that is absolutely how we are feeling. Our cortisol level is 50% higher than normal. I mean, our adrenaline is running at that level. It's hard to think straight. Our emotions are taking over. So our emotions are high. And then we have different opinions. I believe something, you believe something. I see it one way, you see it another way. And then the final one, that win or lose, is the key to all this, because This is where we feel like we're fighting for something. We want to win the argument, or we want to, as a lot of people say, they don't want to lose their position. Or our ego gets in the way, and that's a big one. We want to look smart, we don't want to look dumb, we want to keep our job, we want to keep our security, we want to keep our stability, we want to keep our presence. We're fighting for something, and so we feel that it's either win or lose, and there's no in between. Now, when you have all three, this is the formula for a tough conversation. If we have, let's say, opinions vary, and you and I want to go have lunch, and I want to have pasta, and you want to just have a sandwich, well, our opinions vary. Obviously, we both would like to win, but it's not really all that important. We'll manage it. So the emotions are not high. So it's when you have all three, this is when you know you're in that difficult conversation, that tough conversation. Let me share with you a anecdote here, and I would love to get your thoughts afterwards. So you're going to coach me on what I could have done better in this tough conversation. So as I said, I'm a facilitator trainer. So here's an example of what I do. And we see this picture, we got 5 people, and believe it or not, right now they're in the middle of doing an improv scene. But if you had met them at 7 a.m. when the training started, you would never guess that this is where they ended up. So how did they get there? Well, the day didn't start out that way, obviously. And this is where I'm going to need some coaching on where I could have done even better. Let's give you some background on who these people are. They're here for a 4-day customer service training live when we could do live stuff. So right off the bat, you hear 4 days customer service, and your eyes just start to roll. Like, come on, 4 days. On top of that, these people most of them have been working in customer service for 20 years. And they're here because the role has changed. In fact, it's a demotion, and that's why they're getting this refresher in customer service training. In their job, they're often verbally threatened and occasionally physically threatened as well. And you could see here also, we've got my 12-step customer service process on the flip chart behind them. So these people at 7 a.m. are definitely, do not want to be here. So you can imagine that's how the day starts. So knowing all this, please type in the chat, what are some things that you think I could have done differently? Don't start at 7. Yeah, well, that's true. But they were used to it. That was their schedule. They did shift work, right? So that was their schedule. Yeah, you know what? And they were doing an improv scene. So that's why they are doing this. There was about 50 people in the room. So this is not the class. Yeah, telling them how to do the job. That's a great point. So I came in. The mistake would be to come in and right off the bat say, all right, here's how you are going to do customer service. In fact, mistake number 1, putting up that 12-step customer service process right there from the get-go. What needed to be done here was knowing that the first hour that their emotions were high. And as far as they were concerned, our opinions were varied, and it was a win or lose. They felt that their job was on the line. And why were they felt that they were losing because they were here for this 4-day customer service. That's how they were feeling. Obviously, I'm feeling very stressed because in 4 days, I have to sort of turn these people around and have them believe that they're going to be using this customer service model. But the key here is drop your agenda. Q-tip, which is quit taking it personally. They were angry. They were pointing their fingers. You don't know anything. You don't know how we do our job. You've never been in our position. It had nothing to do with me. They were upset at the situation. And so again, Q-tip had nothing to do with me, not take it personally, and allow them to vent, allow them to listen, allow myself to listen and to empathize with them so that they could lower their temperature and so that we could get to this point in the afternoon. And the good news is, I had an opportunity to do this numerous times with different groups of people. And so that also helps to understand, that this is a good moment to drop my agenda, because you could see there was a certain routine to this. So this is where we start. From this point forward, every conversation that you have is now your opportunity to have a new conversation. So just as I was saying before about this group, I had the opportunity to be with them on different occasions with different people, but I couldn't let the past decide the future. I had to go, okay, I could be aware that there are some things that are probably going to happen, but treat them as though it's the first time I'm hearing their issues, and be present for them in that moment. And so a new conversation means no matter what the relationship you have, and you're thinking of now of someone you might have to have that difficult conversation with, think about a way that you could think of a blank canvas where you're not bringing up the past and you're really focused on the future. Because here is the goal for a tough conversation. It is to get to dialogue. It's not to solve it, which is often what we're thinking when this is happening. How can I solve this? Dialogue means a cooperative exchange, means that we are feeling very safe and comfortable with each other to not just have a conversation, but to really hear what the other person is saying and to be able to respond appropriately. We hear each other. It's not just two people speaking, doing monologues. And the goal for all that is that I feel respected and you feel respected. So that is mutual respect. Let's talk about our process here, our steps. The more 4 steps to better conversation. More because at the end of this webinar, you're going to look at some different ways here, some options. You're going to have more options on how to deal with this. You're going to have more confidence now because you can, even though tough conversations don't get easier, you can now feel better about how to approach that because you're going to have more control. You're going to see how you have more options to do it. And this gives you a feeling of control so that it's not feeling like you're in a reactive mode, but feeling like, okay, I can see how I can navigate this now. And then at the end, if you're getting to dialogue, that means that we've gotten to a place of mutual respect, that there's going to be more respect for you and more respect for the other person. And the relationship is now changing to a better place and a higher level. MORE stands for this: mindset, observe the emotions, respect, and exchange. Mindset is where it absolutely starts. We talked about emotional intelligence strategies. So we're going to look at observing the emotions, yours and theirs. And again, we're going to unpack how you can create a respectful environment. And this earns you the right to get to that exchange, that dialogue part. So let's begin with MORE and the mindset. How do you want them to feel, bigger or smaller? Let's just start right there. If there's one thing you take away from mindset, it's exactly this: is if you want them to feel smaller, well, that is just going to lead to a more tough conversation. But if you want them at the end to feel bigger about how they're feeling about themselves, this is going to definitely get you towards more respect. And think about that with your mindset, that you're going to go into a tough conversation with someone. Think about, can I make this person feel bigger, as opposed to trying to maybe embarrass them or shame them by making them feel smaller. So how do we do this? One is you can ask yourself these 2 questions. What do I want from this relationship? Could it be collaboration, that at the end of this, I see us talking and looking at the problem together? Do I want trust? Do I want a place where after this, where our conversation is at a much deeper and more meaningful level? And so how we're going to do this is our conscious intentions, things that I could be very conscious about what I'm going to do, such as to seek common ground. Now, to seek common ground means that I look at the other person and go, what do we have in common? A value, a belief. Maybe it's we both believe in being very detail oriented. We both believe in the big picture. We both believe in hard work. We both believe that that this project is important and we both want to do good work. So it's seeking common ground. What do we have in common? As we talked about, a new conversation, it's focusing on the future and not the past. So we're looking forward. If we keep bringing up the past, we're just going to go back to making that person feel smaller. Finding a mutual purpose. What, looking at the end objective of our relationship, what is something that is a mutual purpose for us in this relationship? That we will be friends, that we'll be supportive of each other, that we will have a better communication, that we will, when we're in front of the client, we will look that we are unified. So where can we find some mutual purpose? And now the last one here is I borrowed from the book of Getting to Yes, which is a book about negotiation skills. And it's probably about 50 years old or so. And I just tweaked this a little bit. Now they say separate the person from the problem. And I say soft on the person, hard on the problem. So we often do the reverse. We're often hard on the person and we sugarcoat the problem. So soft on the person, hard on the problem is exactly that collaboration about how can we be sitting together and look at this problem together. And that's what soft on the person, hard on the problem is getting to that place. So we want to start with intention. So we want to start with our unconscious intentions is what is going to get in the way. So our unconscious intentions is anger, resentment, frustration. As we said, as I said, if we're bringing the past in, and sometimes we just can't help it. So let's say you are meeting someone you've been working with on a team, and you've given them notes about their PowerPoint, and it's still not quite there, and they just don't seem to really be delivering above and beyond. They're just delivering what's expected, and you keep having to give them notes. So you're going to have a difficult conversation with them and say, this is not working because of this. I keep giving you notes, but you don't seem to be implementing them. I feel like I keep micromanaging you. They also probably are feeling really guilty, so there's all those emotions are going on. There's some different opinions about how to work. But most importantly, you're going to bring your unconscious intentions, which is you're frustrated with this person. Maybe you resent this person because that's not how you would work. If someone gave you notes, you would go above and beyond. And as much as you think you're doing your best to be open, if you're not aware of your unconscious intention, you haven't focused on a conscious intention, then this is what's going to get in the way. You're going to have that bad smile. What I like to say is you're not a good actor. Your acting is going to suck. Basically, we're not good at hiding our unconscious intentions. It comes out in our tone of voice. It comes out in our choice of words. It comes out in our body language. It comes in the way that we think as well. And unconsciously, you might be trying to make that person feel smaller. So here's a little bit of homework for you right now, which is I want you to think of a past, present, or future situation that is with a challenging person, or maybe people, a group, as I had a group, for example. What's an intention that you could seek? Could you seek common ground? Could you find mutual purpose? Could you try to be soft on the person, hard on the problem? Could you focus on the future, not the past? And again, how do you want them to feel? Bigger or smaller? So I hope you are visualizing someone and thinking about one of these things that you could just try to do. That's where you want to start. How can I start the conversation already by, hey, I know we've had different opinions. This is what we do have in common, or this is what we both want to accomplish, or I know you've been going through a difficult time. Soft on the person. This is where I see us going as a team, focusing on the future, not the past. Let's talk about those emotional intelligence strategies. So we're going to talk about two right here: self-awareness and self-management. They go hand in hand. So self-awareness is, what are those triggers? Why am I feeling this way? Why is this bothering me so much? Because it might not bother somebody else. For them, it might not be a trigger, but we all have different triggers. So how do we manage them? So we're going to be looking at self-talk and our values and our beliefs. So if you could put in the chat and answer these two questions. So first question is, how many words per minute do we think? Let's just answer that one. How many words per minute do we think? So put in the chat, how many words per minute do we think? Okay. Gary says a lot. We got 60. Renee says about 100. Lorraine says about 50. Simar says about 200. Tara says too many. LOL. Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely think a lot of words. 1 million. My goodness, that is a lot. 1 million words. Okay. How many words do you think we could say per minute? And I'll give you the answers in a second. How many words do you think we could say per minute? So if we're thinking anywhere from 1 million to 60, how many words can we say per minute, do you think? And this is on average. Some people speak faster or slower. So yeah, but McKay says 70 words per minute we could say. 30 is another answer here. Yeah. And Renee says about 100. Those are some really good guesses. Here we go. Let me break it to you. Here we go. We think on average about 450 words per minute. We could say about 150. And so this is where the self-talk comes in. So I think you could do the math right here. That means there's about 300 words that are not expressed. There's 300 words that are floating around there, and that's our self-talk. when you think about, you go to the souvenir store and you buy that snow globe and you shake it all around, that's that 300 words. It's all the crystals in the snow floating around there. And often self-talk is judgmental. It protects us. We've got our conscious self-talk, which is, hey, I got this, I can do this. And then we got a lot of that 300 words per minute that is just like the radio here. It's like that AM radio, when it's like all talk radio, it's always going on in the background. It's that constant noise. And here's the stories that we tell ourselves when we're triggered. We tell ourselves these classic stories, which is the victim, the villain, helpless. Those are the classic self-talk stories we tell ourselves. The victim is, oh, this always happens to me. Oh my God, always happens to me. The villain, oh, everything I've done for that person, and this is how they thank me. Oh, hey, look at them. So it's always their fault. And then helpless. Well, I tried everything and nothing I can do. So the victim is, the reason we share this is that now we want to be able to manage it. So we want to be able to manage our victim talk, which is, oh, this always happens to me. Well, do we want to challenge that? So this is where we want to be conscious of our self-talk and go, well, hang on, am I telling myself the same story again, which is this always happens to me? So is there a trend here? Is there something I could do differently? Is there a way that I could change my communication? Am I missing something from the other person? Am I thinking about the other person, or am I just thinking about myself? And the villain, well, maybe there's a reason why they're doing this to me. Maybe I didn't quite communicate something in a proper way. Maybe I was disrespectful. Maybe I didn't take their thinking or their perspective into play. And am I really helpless? Is there anything I can't do? And sleep on that possibly. So being conscious of our self-talk is number one, about how to manage it and to challenge ourselves in these three stories. So stop, challenge, and choose when you're playing the victim, villain, or helpless radio stations. If we look at this about our values and our beliefs, so look at this examples here and maybe what rings true for you. And sometimes the best way is to maybe score it like a 1, 5, or 10. 1, like authenticity, not important to me. 5, yeah, kind of. 10, absolutely. There might be a 7 or an 8. And you could put in the chat which one you think is an important value or belief to you. Like I'll share with you, mine is humor. Humor for me is a 10. When I see someone also has a sense of humor and they're fast and they get it with that sense of humor, I feel immediately connected to that person. So, so Renee, for you, when you probably meet someone who has loyalty as an example, you probably like that person because you share those values and beliefs. But if it's someone who is, the opposite of loyalty, then that's one of the reasons why we might get into a difficult conversation. Compassion would be really important to Roberts, and authenticity, says Lorraine. So when people are not authentic, Lorraine, then that probably already sends a trigger for you. So realizing what your values and beliefs are really important so that you can see and start to understand the other person's perspective and go, maybe I'm having challenge with this person because it's my values or beliefs that are being challenged here, because this is how I operate. So if I meet someone who doesn't have humor, I have to start to look at other ways to be able to connect with that person, because that is not how we are going to have that common ground. And Tara, thank you. Yeah, authenticity, 100%. And, especially with leaders, if you're a leader, definitely people in your organization will say authenticity is so important as a leader. So how do we do this? Well, we talked about that win or lose, and there's two things we're going to do here, right here. One, drop your ego. So as I like to say, Q-tip, quit taking it personally. Q-tip, drop your ego. Stop fighting for that you want to look smart, that you want to look sharp, that you want to be the bigger person here. Be focused on the other person. What are their needs as well? And we'll show you what we mean by that. But drop your ego. Stop fighting for that, because you will miss all the subtle clues and cues that are coming from the other person. Number two, we talked about that unconscious intention. Well, one way to stop that unconscious intention is to flood your brain with oxygen. Our brain, as I take a deep breath, our brain needs about 20% of our oxygen. And the brain is really small. And so it actually requires an enormous amount of oxygen. When you're not breathing, which is what's happening when we're in that difficult conversation, it affects the blood flow to your brain, and that affects your ability to think straight. It affects your emotions. It affects your body language, your choice of words, and affects those intentions that you're going to do. So flood your brain with oxygen. So when you're thinking about getting that difficult conversation, drop your ego. Take a breath before you go into it. And you could just see off the bat, one deep breath, and my voice is already a lot calmer. And that, authenticity will also come out when that happens. So flooding your brain with oxygen, so important. Hollywood tip. Now, when I was an actor, people would always ask me, Joel, how do you remember all those lines? And nobody speaks like that, like 15th, 16th century English. And I said, well, don't remember lines. We remember the intention. And the intention is always the same. The intention is, I'm in this role, and my role is to try to move the other actor. So if I'm not delivering those lines by being fully present with an intention, and that I'm focused on the present, I'm not thinking about the end of the script, I'm not thinking about where I want to go with this. I have to be fully present, and I have to listen to the other actor, to their words and to their feelings, so that I will also be moved by that. And as an actor, if you can't do that, then you'll not move the other person, and then you're acting. You're just saying lines. You're all in your head. There's nothing being true that what you're trying to do here. Nothing authentic or genuine of what you're trying to do. So you're not going to be able to move the other actor. Now they're going to end up acting to try to cover it up, and the audience is not going to believe you. So if you ever seen a movie or a play and go, something's wrong about that acting, it's because they're not really being present. So if they don't move that person, the scene falls flat, everyone disengages. So what that means is, when you're in a tough conversation, borrow from Hollywood, be present, have that intention, listen for the words and the feelings that the other person is saying, so that you are also then able to be in that moment and respond appropriately. Let's talk about observe the emotions, the O in M.O.R.E. So here's a quick quiz. Communication is made up of 3 parts. What percentage does each part make up? So spoken word, tone of voice, body language. You don't have to write the spoken word, tone of voice, or body language. You can just write the 3 numbers. So out of 100%, how much is spoken word? How much is tone of voice? How much is body language in communication? When people are receiving communication, what parts or percentages are they receiving? Are they receiving the words, the voice, or the body language the most? Body language, says McKay, 75%, 20% spoken word from Christy, 30 tone of voice, and 50 for body language from Christy. Tatiana, 20, 40, 40, the really good guesses. Janice, sorry, spoken 10, tone 30, body 70. You have really good guesses. Byron says about equal. Jennifer, 100, 100, 100. Absolutely. Thank you, Lorraine. And Beaulieu, 10, 10, and 80. Really good guess. The consensus here is that tone of voice and body language has a lot. So there you go. Congratulations. You're already head of the class, which is, and this was developed by an engineer, by the way, who realized, and an engineer, you think, well, words are so important. The facts and the logic are so important, but it's really when we're communicating, and especially now we're in this virtual environment, if our cameras are on, we're looking at the person, and we're looking for their body language, their facial expression, and the tone of voice. And we want to see if it matches the words. So if you want to get to trust, that's what we're looking for. So if I was to say, no, I'm not upset. No, sir. No, ma'am. I am not upset. The words say I'm not upset, but it's very obvious that my body language, my tone of voice is saying something completely different. It's incongruent, and it says something to us, and it may not be as obvious as that. It could be much more subtle than that, but we just know subconsciously we're going, something's not right here. I hear the words, I'm really excited to be here. I'm hearing the words excited, but something's missing with the body language and tone of voice. So be aware of that people talked about authenticity as being a value. If you want to get to trust in a difficult conversation, it's important that the body language and the voice and the tone match those spoken words, or else you could say all that you want, people will not be listening or hearing you. And we talked about these emotions. This is a crazy, crazy, crazy slide. What I love about this slide is that there's such a wide range of vocabulary for our emotions. And the most important thing here is you don't have to know the whole vocabulary. It's just look on the right over here, and you've got the intensity of the feelings. So you got the low, medium, and then the high. And if we look at angry as an example, and you're going to have difficult conversation with someone, and they come in and they just seem under angry. They just seem that they seem outraged. Well, are they really at a 9? Or maybe they were just defensive, frustrated. They were at a 5. Maybe they were annoyed. Maybe they were at a 4. And yourself, maybe you've been building this up. So you're starting to get, maybe you think you're terrified under afraid. You're terrified. Are you really terrified? Are you really at like almost a 10? Or are you intimidated or uneasy at like a 5 or 6? And the reason I say this is we often over-exaggerate the emotions. We over-exaggerate the emotions of the other person. We give them a much higher number, and we give our own emotions a much higher number as well. And so one is to acknowledge, where are we at? What number am I at? What number is this person at? 2, my role in difficult conversation is, how can I maybe lower that number? I probably won't get them over to happy. I probably won't get them over to, cheerful or ecstatic. Maybe I'll get them over to pleased or mellow, on the lower end of happy. But if I could just lower that temperature, that'll make it easier for us to start communicating and getting to dialogue. What is empathy? That is the question. If anyone has any examples of what they think empathy is, please type it into the chat. And the reason we're going to talk about empathy is that because in business, especially in difficult conversations, it's hard. It's hard to do empathy. We get sometimes confused between sympathy. Here we go, being in another person's shoes, feeling for the other person, understanding how the other person feels. Renee says understanding other emotions. Lorraine, being sensitive. C. Robert says considering the other person's feelings. Yeah, all really, really good examples of empathy. And what I'm going to show you now is actually 3 ways that you use empathy that kind of answers everybody's examples here. So in business and in life, but specifically, in our business difficult conversations, number 1 is probably going to be the cognitive empathy. Emotional empathy might be for someone who's a little bit closer, maybe in business or in personal, and compassion empathy could be in business and probably going to be even more personal. And I'll explain these in a second. Cognitive empathy is you don't share that person's emotion. You don't know why they're feeling that way. You can't relate to it. You can't acknowledge it. You're trying to be in the other person's shoes, but you just can't see it. Cognitive empathy is you see that it's important to the other person. So it's recognizing that it's important to them, even though it has nothing to do with you. So it's simply, I could see that this situation has been challenging. I could see that the situation has been frustrating. I'm hearing that there's some frustration in your voice about this. I'm hearing some discontent. So it's just acknowledging that is how they are feeling. Not trying to solve it. It's just mirroring back, reflecting back what you see, what you hear. That's all empathy is, reflecting back what you see, what you hear. Emotional empathy is that I share that feeling with you. Oh yeah, I've been there. I know how difficult that is. I know how challenging it is. I know how agitating that is, how irritating that is. You've been there. You could share that. Compassionate empathy is no brain, all heart, which means it goes back to this picture of this little kitten here. It's like you just go, ah, that's compassionate empathy. It's like, what can I do to help? It's got nothing to do with can I relate to this? Do I have an example? Can I nothing? It's totally, I'm there. What do you need? So if we were to look at this one as an example, what could be a cognitive statement that we could make? So we see our person here is looking at the screen. We don't know what this person is thinking or feeling or saying, but we'll just take a stab at a cognitive. What do you see from this person? So type in the chat. What would be an example of cognitive? Yeah, frustrated. So how would you sort of phrase that? Chrissy. Like Chrissy, you were frustrated. So anyways, how would you phrase that, this person's frustrated? Because we're good at recognizing what the problem is. Oh, this person's frustrated, but how do we actually say to the person, so A, it doesn't feel like we just took a webinar on communication skills, overwhelmed? Yeah, for sure. How do you phrase that? I see that you're frustrated. Yeah. That's a great start. You can't go wrong with which is validating. Yeah, some of the comments here that are coming in, which is about validating what you see. You can't go wrong with a genuine attempt at, hey, I see whatever you're looking on the screen looks pretty frustrating. Whatever is, a genuine attempt to try to connect to that person. What could be an emotional statement that you could make? Obviously, this person is overwhelmed, frustrated, looking at the screen. What could be an emotional empathy statement that we could make? I've been there, says Lorraine. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, technology. It really sucks. It's really frustrating. I get it. Yeah, and then compassionate would be that jumping in. What can I do to help? Let's talk now about the respect. And so get ready. We're going to try out a couple things here with this. So respect is one of the key things because it gets into our win or lose. We feel like we're being disrespected and the other person is also feeling disrespected. So we want to get to a place where I feel like I'm being respected and you feel like you are being respected. So we'll borrow from the world of Hollywood. So like we said, making the other person making them feel bigger or smaller. We have two rules from the world of improvisation here. Rule number one, always make the other person look good. And this is hard because, like we said, drop your ego. And that's really hard, but make the other person look good. And when you come in with that intention about making the other person look good, already they're going to feel respected and it's going to help be reciprocal. And then the idea of yes, and, which is about collaboration, open ideas, not dismissing or judging. Can I have a volunteer? You can put your hand up and Melanie will help me with this as well to find the volunteer to come in and try out this yes and with me. You don't even have to put your camera on if you want. You can bonus, but you have to just take yourself off of mute and try this out. I'll have a sip of water while we're waiting for a volunteer. Melanie, do we have a volunteer?
I can volunteer.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. All right, Melanie, we're going to be working at the same company, small world.
Yep.
We are on the party committee to create a back to work party when we go live. We come back to the office, let's say March, and we're on a committee to sort of create something when everyone comes back to the office.
Okay.
All right. So just so you know, the first part, like we're brainstorming ideas, like you're going to say, hey, what about a potluck? And then I'll reply. But just so you know, I will reply at the beginning with yes, but.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
All right. Yes.
All right, here we go.
So return to work party, Joel. I think we should have a massive potluck and I think we should go somewhere and do something, maybe like axe throwing or a trampoline place.
Yes. But that's a lot coming at everybody that all of a sudden now we're going axe throwing and then or jumping or something like that. That feels like a lot. It's overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people.
Okay. Do you want me to keep going with ideas?
Yeah. Do you have any other ideas? Yeah.
Yeah, we could go to a restaurant. We could do an Ottawa City bus tour.
Yeah, but the restaurant, then people don't want to sort of be stuck sitting next to maybe someone. They want to really see everyone. And the bus tour, again, same thing, where we're sitting on a bus and it's not really communal feeling of being back at work. And all right, we'll pause there. Let's try it again. We'll go back in time. I'm going to change and I'm going to answer with yes and. I'm going to change my mindset and I'm going to answer with yes and in this version. Don't change anything.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Let's go back in time and try it again from the beginning.
Okay, so Joel, this party, I think we should have a massive potluck. Everybody bring something in, and then I think we should do like an activity, like axe throwing or like a trampoline room or something.
Yes, and I like the idea of a potluck because it's like we get to, maybe people we haven't met yet because we've been in the virtual environment. So where people are bringing in their favorite dish. That's a great conversation starter. And I like the idea of activity where we're going, leaving the office now. We're doing something together, like something, communal. I like that.
Great. And if we could always go to a restaurant if the potluck doesn't work, or maybe we could do like a city bus around Ottawa.
Yes, I like the idea of like, maybe everyone's tired of cooking. So we can maybe think of some different ideas, whether it be catered or a restaurant, and then do like something innovative, yeah, let's be a tourist in our own city. All right, we'll pause right there. So did anyone notice a difference between the yes, but and yes, and version? If you want to type that in the chat. While you're typing that in the chat, Mel, how did you feel when when I was answering with yes, but?
Yeah, I kind of didn't want to give you more ideas after the first yes, but
Right. How did you feel when, absolutely. And then how did you feel when I was giving you yes and answers?
yeah, better. It felt more collaborative, like doing something.
Absolutely. And that it doesn't mean we have to use those words. So thank you, Mel. It doesn't mean we have to use those words of saying yes, but or yes, and, but specifically yes, and. Um, the idea here is that yes and is a mindset of how can I make the ideas as big as possible, and maybe I don't agree on the ideas, but as you heard me say, I didn't say yes to the restaurant. I said yes, I like the idea of maybe eating out. So we're collaborating together. So yes and is, in other words, is don't dismiss, don't judge the idea and before we explore it further. So some great comments here, and I'll look at that in a second. So again, always make the other person look good is basically the result of that. Um, the work doesn't stall is some of the comments here. Yes was open. Yes is a closed feeling. Yes is making the other person work really hard. Um, and but always sounds negative, much more collaborative. Um, the yes, your tone, body language in the yes, absolutely. It means you're just being open to the idea. So I'm dropping my ego. I'm saying yes, but is often I'm fighting for my own ego. Our next thing here is listening, which is a big part to make the other person feel respected. So if you want someone to feel respected, the idea is yes, and, which is let's be collaborative. I'm not going to dismiss or judge your ideas, but I'm going to see if there's also any alternatives as we're going through this before I dismiss or judge it, and then make the other person look good. And now listening, which is such a key component. Now, when we listen, the challenge is 75% of the time we're distracted, we're preoccupied, we're not really paying attention because we're busy thinking of the next great question we're going to ask. We're trying to solve the problem. 50% of the time we'll remember what the person said right afterwards, but an hour later maybe I'll remember 20% of what you just said. And if I'm not too crazy about the subject or the person, I will remember even less. So know that this is what we're fighting against when we're trying to make sure that someone is listening to us, but also realize this in yourself when you're listening. Am I distracted? Am I preoccupied? Am I thinking of that great question to ask? Am I missing the subtle clues and cues that are coming? Am I trying to solve the problem? And often we are trying to solve the problem. So I'm just going to, give you a quick example around this. And if I was to share, my personal problem as an example, and see if you could listen to it without solving it. So my problem is that, both of my boys play active. Oh, so what you're looking for while you're listening, sorry, is you're listening for what do you see? What do you hear? What do I seem to care about? So you're not looking to solve it. You're just listening for what seems important to me in this anecdote I'm going to share. So both of my boys play a high level of sports, which is great. It was baseball in the summer, now hockey in the winter. That's great. They're away from their devices, which, I so appreciate. And they're doing team sports, which is great. You're learning camaraderie, learning resilience. What I don't like, what I really struggle with is when it comes time to these tournaments and we have to go to some place where there's a bad motel and there's a bunch of teenagers running around the hotel all night, and then the parents are drinking in the hallway, and this is, this is not how I want to be spending my weekend, stuck in this place, going from one rink to another and being stuck in this motel, with again those teenagers running around and parents drinking in the hallway. Go kind of, I'm struggling with those values and beliefs on my side, about how I should be spending my time on that. So I'll pause there. Without solving it, what sounded important to me? What seemed to be my care about? Because if you're trying to solve it, you're probably thinking, why don't I just carpool? Why don't I just send the kids with a carpool? Why am I going? Why don't I take up drinking? So those are the things you might be trying to solve it. So what are some of the things that you sort of saw and heard that was important? The kids running, the parents drinking. Yeah, for sure. That was what was happening. But why was that, was that important to me? Yeah, the boys' sports activity is very important. Yeah. I value the sport and time with the kids. I didn't like the travel and the social aspects. Yeah. And as you heard, some of the clues were, this is against my values and beliefs. So my, again, that this is maybe not how I want to be spending my time as well. And so the reason we do this about listening without solving is this is a difficult exercise for us to not, so crystal clear how you could solve this. But all I wanted to do is I wanted to know that you heard me and that I felt respected and I felt understood before we went on to questions like, how often do you do this? Or, have you thought of carpooling? Before we go to questions, before we go to solving, people want to feel heard and understood. So this brings us to the exchange, which is, you now have earned the right to get to the exchange. And we'll sum it up in a second. Is because your actions match your intentions. So again, that voice, that body language, the tone of voice, the choice of words, it matched the intentions of I'm genuinely here to try to make you feel bigger, not smaller. I really trying to see common ground. You're aware of what's triggering you and how to manage it. You're dropping your ego as an example. You're taking that deep breath. You're asking yourself, why is this bothering me? What is the self-talk that you're telling yourself? You empathize with the other person. So now you know how to cognitively empathize with that person. You understood your emotions, what's going on. You tried to make them look good so that you can get to that respect. You listened for what was important to them, not just for the facts, but what was important to them. What did you see? What did you hear? And by doing that, you showed respect. So you created what we call psychological safety. Psychological safety means we're now free to be able to talk to each other in a way that we feel we're not judging each other, that we're open to each other's ideas. And this earns you the right now to be able to ask those questions, to make your request. And I give you this warning, which is, maybe we're not quite there yet. You still might need to listen again. So after you ask your questions and you make your request, this is not necessarily a like done, we've solved it. You might need to listen again because maybe not everything has been resolved. So this is our M.O.R.E model, which is our mindset, observe the emotions, respect and exchange, puts it all together to, again, it's kind of a circle where it's like you might have to go back to that mindset. You might have to go back to that intention. You might have to go back to the emotions because it's not going to be linear. We're not robots quite yet. We will get there. So thank you so much and for this, and I'm going to take some questions in the chat. I want to draw your attention here as we're doing that is let you know that at Great Canadian Training and Consulting Company and CompuEase, we've got these upcoming classes. You see on the left, we got our software training classes with the amazing Christine Irons. If you've ever taken a class with her, you know what I mean. She's amazing at, I'm a software, I need help. She's so good at really giving me some tips and tricks and really making it easy and manageable. On my side, I got the professional skills training. So looking forward to delivering these courses, especially the communication skills on November 1st. Virtual facilitation is, facilitating and in a virtual environment. How do you do that? Master it. And conflict be gone, navigating difficult conversations. Draw your attention to that. because that is, if you enjoyed this webinar and you want to go deeper now and really practice in a classroom setting, in a virtual environment for now, then this is a strongly suggest you take this workshop on December 8th. It's really going to go deeper into those tough conversations at work. You could bring those samples, we could practice that. And as well, we also offer coaching, which is individual coaching and group coaching, whether there be difficult conversations or any of the professional skills that you want to work on, or even software skills as well. So please put your questions into the chat. We have some time to answer some questions. And then while you're doing that, again, just a reminder, there's some upcoming webinars. If you enjoyed this webinar, wait, there's more. And here we go. We got, and before the year is over, we got Microsoft applications, and we've got 5 things every SharePoint user should know. I'll be back with the webinar on what AI can't do, Hi Can, your human intelligence. And on February 7th, we're doing storytelling with style, how you should be using that within PowerPoint. Mel, do we have any questions? I may not be able to see it here in the chat. Do we have public speaking workshops? From Lorraine? Yeah, we do. It's actually called presentation skills how to deliver and lead presentation skills that inspire action. And also the communication skills workshop is really good for public speaking, because I get it, Lorraine, public speaking is probably everyone's sort of #1 challenge. So you could go to greatcanadiantraining.ca to get to look at the calendar for the deliver and inspire great presentation skills. Thank you everybody for some of the comments here. I appreciate that. So a question here, if you're at an impasse after several conversations, should you offer to bring in a 3rd person to the discussion? Yeah, absolutely. I think that is also good. And the fact that you're aware that we're not making any progress. And then the other way is what we call is to sort of apologize with an intention and to sort of get back to our mutual purpose, which is a don't or do statement, Roberts. And so don't is, for example, I don't want you to think that we keep coming to these conversations and we're really struggling to get there. And maybe it seems like I'm being defensive. What I do want is us to see a way that we can get to a place where we can have an exchange or dialogue. I have some ideas, but I'm open to yours as well. And then maybe you could see if they'd be open to a 3rd person, or they might say, well, right there, thank you for sharing that. I agree. This has been frustrating. They were always sort of being challenged and butting heads, so to speak. So it's called the don't and do as a way to sort of re-get to safety. I don't want you to think that, I'm coming to these conversations to look for argument. I do want us to find a way to maybe get back to, the reason we want to be more collaborative, as an example. Thank you for all the comments. I appreciate that. Okay, thank you. I'm glad that was helpful, Robert. And so again, if you have any questions, you could go to info@greatcanadiantraining.ca or training@CompuEase if you're in the Ottawa or Quebec region. Christy, thank you. Engaging presentation, great visuals. Thank you. I appreciate that. So thank you to Rafa on the visuals. So thank you for doing that, Rafa, on the visuals, and great to hear that the presentation was engaging in that this was a value of your time.